All right, hi everyone, and welcome to this Hangout on Air on optimizing your shopping campaigns for the holidays. My name is Nicole Primo, and I'm the Partner Education Manager for Google Shopping and Emerging Ads. I'm excited to be with you all here today. Hopefully, you're well into your holiday planning, and we can really focus on the tactical execution steps that you need to take so that you're taking full advantage of shopping campaigns, new opportunities and insights, but also feeling prepared so you can go home and have your own family time while making sure that your campaigns are set up for success. So for those of you who are new to the Google Plus Hangout on Air platform, welcome. Just a couple of housekeeping items. First and foremost, you should feel free to chat in your questions at any time. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a Q&A widget. You can feel free to type in your questions as they come up, and that allows other people and other participants to vote on them. So at the end of the session, we will take your live questions, and we'll start with the ones that have the most votes and are the most popular. Additionally, this session will be recorded and posted on YouTube as well as on the Google Plus event page that you used to get in here in the first place. So at any time after the event, if you want to share this with your colleagues or if you want to rewind and watch another part, feel free. You'll be able to skip around, and then the questions that we answer will also be bookmarked so you can jump right to them and review those answers as well. So without further ado, I will dive into our content. We have a lot of it today. Great. So to get us started, here is kind of a rough agenda, what we're going to be talking about today. So first and foremost, we're going to start with some 2014 holiday trends. This will help us make sure that we're hitting the key points in our holiday strategy that will really set us up for success. Then we'll talk you through our top recommendations for retailers. So this means all of the tactical and strategic steps you should be taking in order to ensure your shopping campaigns and your overall retail Q4 strategy is really well aligned with these trends as well as with your own strategic goals. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, we were Q&A, so get those questions in whenever they come up. So starting with those holiday trends, basically what we're trying to do here is talk through a couple of the key insights that you should be thinking about when you're designing your Q4 strategy. So I'll go through these fairly quickly because they're probably not that new, but we'll start with the fact that tentpole events will no longer be a seasonal, or a single day rather. So this would be like last year, Black Friday took on a new name called Gray Friday, and essentially that was because query demand is shifting earlier and earlier. Retailers are responding so that by the time we get to those typically historically high peak days like Black Friday, a lot of consumers have already started ebbing their demand simply because they've already fulfilled their purchases that they need to make. So it's not to say that these days won't be important in your strategy. They absolutely will be. It's just to say that we want to make sure that we're setting up our campaigns to be live well in advance and really taking advantage of the query peak that starts much earlier in not one day. So next, we did a little bit of research, and we found that there are two key factors that help consumers decide when to make an online purchase. So these are pretty intuitive, but just to put some stats behind that intuition, 9 out of 10 shoppers cite low prices as important or very important when shopping online. So you probably have fallen into this as a consumer yourself. Essentially, you have an idea of what you want, but you're not ready to really, kind of pull the trigger or actually make that decision to purchase unless you see that that's a great deal, it's on sale, and it really is going to fit your budget. Then that's when you move from consideration to actual execution. On top of that, 58% of shoppers have actually added items to their shopping carts simply to qualify for free shipping. So again, you've probably noticed this behavior in yourself. If there's a $75 threshold, for example, you might as well add an extra $5 item and save the $13 of shipping cost or whatever the specific example is. So as you talk to your clients, if you're an agency, or as you plan your own retail strategy, if you're a retailer yourself, really important to keep in mind these two motivating factors so that you're surfacing on your landing pages low prices and you're also designing shipping deals when they make sense. And hopefully by now you're all thinking about mobile whenever you think about designing a new campaign. But just to emphasize mobile's role in holiday success, here are a couple of pretty astonishing stats. So 5+ hours is what we spend on average with digital every single day. And of these 5 hours on average, 60% of this time is spent on mobile devices, meaning that almost 40% of total site traffic is now from mobile devices. So you guys know people are shopping all the time from everywhere simply because they have devices at their fingertips and search technology to find what they want. So it's important to think about what mobile is going to do for your holiday strategy, and we'll talk about a little bit later some tips for success in terms of how you should be integrating with product listing ads in particular. So to pair kind of Google's shopping's global momentum from mobile PLAs, think about this. So when we launched mobile PLAs just about a year ago, it was a really different user experience. Since then we've done a lot of research, and we've also increased our triggering rate 70%. So that means compared to last year, we're displaying mobile PLAs on queries 70% more of the time. So paired with triggering more often, obviously we wanted to make sure it's still a good user experience. So we've done a lot of design improvement on our mobile PLA ad unit so that we've seen 110% year-over-year increase in click-through rates. So you probably have seen these. This is that swipeable technology, so you can browse without ever leaving that search page. You get images front and center. You get prices front and center. So we're really working on making this a better experience. Sitting online, and we know there are a lot of them on their mobile phones, can still get that great PLA experience. So paired with mobile devices is local. So local meaning how many people are using their mobile phones to find and influence in-store purchases. So kind of the bad news on this front is that total in-store foot traffic has been decreasing, but the silver lining here, and really the true opportunity, is that despite the decline in overall traffic, we're seeing the value of each store visit roughly double to essentially make up for all of that lost unique visitor. So, long story short, as you think about things like post-shipping cutoff, that date, December 15th or December 20th or whatever it is, where your clients can no longer guarantee that orders will be fulfilled and shipped in time for Christmas, mobile becomes more important because people are looking to pick up something and have it in hand on the way home from the store. And so you really want to influence their behavior in terms of which store they choose to stop in. So all of these trends are great for thinking about strategy, and hopefully you are all now very familiar with the fact that PLAs are managed through shopping campaigns. So we're excited about this holiday season because we have some trends that indicate that it's going to be a strong Q4 in terms of revenue, and we also now believe that shopping campaigns give you better tools, better insights, and better levers to pull so that at the end of the day, you're going to be able to act more efficiently and just simply smarter on what's going on in your campaigns. So that's part of the reason that we're having this webinar now, is because we heard that people still feel like they're ramping up on the learning curve of shopping campaigns. They're starting to see the power, but they want to have more insight into the new metrics and levers they have to pull. So that's what we're going to do today, is talk you through not only strategy, but also the actual levers that shopping campaigns present. So here's where we're going to jump into our top recommendations for retailers. So essentially, we've designed kind of our recommendations around 3 key phases. Hopefully these are intuitive, but starting today and finishing up hopefully pretty soon, your planning phase. So this is where you'll finalize your Q4 plan that hopefully you're already talking about, and you'll also set your budgets and the key performance indicators that you'll judge the success of your campaign against. Next, you'll be thinking about implementation, so starting in the next couple of days and moving through the end of October. This is where you're going to establish a strong baseline using your campaigns to really make sure that you're executing on your plan that you've already established, and you'll also be building your seasonal campaigns that will only run through Q4. And then last but certainly not least, in November and December, we're going to talk about the optimization levers you have, but we're going to do it through the lens of optimizing defensively. So at this point, with everything set up, you don't want to be making big risks. You don't want to be doing sweeping changes. You really want to make sure that you're just kind of fine-tuning the strategy you've put in place so that you're uncapping potential within what you've already established. Blue, which, as hopefully you've caught on, means that you're in your planning phase. So first and foremost, you'll need to finalize your merchandising strategy. So this is something that historically we have not given a lot of best practices around, but we want to just talk briefly about it today because we think it's a great opportunity for us to make more transparent kind of the way we would think about it if we were designing campaigns from scratch, and then you can use it to compare against what you do, maybe take another an idea or two from it, but just kind of gut check what you've already done. So essentially, plan a merchandising strategy is all about finding that heat map of your products. So if you sell 100,000 products, obviously you're not going to pay equal attention to each of those 100,000 throughout the season. You're going to pick the pockets of products that make more sense and that you know will help you win in Q4, meaning they'll drive revenue, they'll drive website visits, they'll drive customer lifetime value, and they'll drive average order values. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. A lot of this depends on getting internal kind of retailer specific conversion data, understanding what's selling in stores, what's selling through the website, regardless of where the traffic comes from, organic or AdWords or whatever it is. But it's also looking at things like Google Trends or looking at your search query report to find what's popular, what are those rising products, and even what are the things that you sell that are being heavily promoted through other channels. So one thing that I like to think, or one example that I like to use is we all know that around Christmas time, in particular, cologne commercials and billboards and magazine ads go through the roof, more or less. For some reason, that's a product that gets promoted really, really heavily. So if you're selling a certain brand of cologne or perfume that you know is going to be kind of a big budget promotional item during the holidays, it's great to identify that as a pocket so that you can kind of leverage the momentum that that brand will be generating around that product. So the next thing you'll need to do is actually use your insights and kind of that heat seeking or that heat map of products to create a retail calendar. So what we mean by this is working of top products, sales, and promotions. So for example, this could be literally a promotion where, for example, during Halloween, you're having 10% off all black and orange apparel. So you know the promotion is 10% off, and you know the products are anything that's black or orange. This can also, though, be kind of independent of a specific promotion. So for instance, from December 1st to December 24th, around that Christmas time, this may be where you have, let's say, about 1.5 thousand products that you know just perform really well. These might be your gift packages or your gift baskets or those bundleable products that just sell really well during this season. Even though there may not be a specific promotion attached to it, it is something that you want to slate in your retail calendar because you know that during that period, these products are going to be a key focus of your strategy. So last but not least in planning, it's important to know exactly what your holiday budget is and forecast for it. So here is where you'll need to work with the right people if you're an agency within your retailer's organization, or if you're a retailer even within your own organization. Different people will have different perspectives on the demand side. For instance, the IT department or your account managers probably know e-commerce growth really well. They probably know your specific historical performance, so they can use average CPCs and average click-through rates to understand the likelihood that you'll spend your budget. So you want to make sure that you have people at the table who understand the demand side of things. You also want to make sure you have people at the table who understand the supply side of the business, so more about the profit margins of specific products as well as the customer lifetime value. So maybe an X product doesn't convert as well today, but it leads to a really long, healthy relationship with that customer. So it's worth the short-term return on investment that's a little bit lower because it invites a longer-term return. So that's kind of what hopefully you can start to see in this graph. We can see that if you only have one side or the other at the table, you might miss where they overlap that second peak, or that you miss that first peak. Whereas historical search data might show a certain really high volume time, and that's important to keep in your strategy. You also want to make sure that you're looking at the profit data to understand and capture that second peak as well. So we're moving into our implementation section. So here we're going to start talking about the fundamental tactical steps to take in terms of your feed as well as your campaign structure so that you're actually executing on all of the planning you're getting close to completing. So first and foremost, regardless of whether you manage your feed yourself, you have an agency that manages your feed, or even if you're an agency that only manages the campaign side of your clients, feeds are important to every single one of you, no matter whether you have a direct action or direct ownership of it or not. And the reason is simply this: without a functioning feed, or with a limited feed, you severely limit your product advertising, meaning that you can never be as successful as if you had a well-functioning, optimized feed. So as a starting point, you want to make sure that whoever is responsible for your feed is setting up the appropriate alerts in the general settings of their Merchant Center account. So the Merchant Center account allows you to specify critical account issue contacts as well as technical issue contacts. And at the end of the day, we strongly recommend that you create an alias of multiple points of contact, or not checking the email or whatever it is. You can make sure that multiple people who need to be aware and can take action on the issues are alerted when things come up. So step number 2 is, once you have the alert set up, you need to make sure that you're submitting 100% of the products you sell online in your feed. So there's an easy way to kind of gut check whether that's happening or not, and it's in the Merchant Center account in the very first page that you typically enter in, which is the dashboard. Here you'll see this graph, which gives you the product's overview. Ideally, if it's flat at around, let's say, 80,000, that means that over the past however long, you've been submitting 80,000 SKUs. So that means that, you know, no big inventory hikes or dips, and hopefully if 80,000 is about right for your internal SKU count, then you're submitting everything. If you see big peaks and valleys, you want to see what's going on, because that could mean that inventory is not getting submitted maybe from your e-commerce database the way you thought it was, or if you find that that rough number, that 80,000 that we see here, is not even close to what you know you submit, or rather you know you sell online, that's when you want to check this. Make sure that your feed is submitting everything in your inventory so that you can show up whenever searchers are shopping. Step number 3 is that ideally, now that you have 100% of your items in your feed, you want to make sure that all 100% of those are actually eligible to show as product listing ads. So there are many reasons that products can get disapproved, but essentially there are 2 really important ones from the standpoint of making sure that inventory continues to show and is not at risk for disapproval. So even if you do nothing else to address item level disapprovals, there are 2 that you should be auditing your feed for. The first one is, find a way to get that feed as a CSV or a text file, open it up in any spreadsheet editor, go to the top column that's labeled GTIN, and filter for any rows that are missing that value. If you do not have a UPI, which also stands for Unique Product Identifier, in your GTIN attribute, you severely limit your product's ability to show. So kind of long story short, and I'm happy to answer more questions about this if you're looking for a technical explanation, but at the end of the day, make sure that every single product has the correct unique product identifier associated with it. Along those lines, In the Merchant Center account, we will let you know if you are blocking us from crawling your website or your images. This is a really easy fix. Typically what's going on here is that your website has a robots.txt file that is saying, Google, you cannot crawl my website. It's very easy to fix that robots.txt file, but the issue is if you don't, we may have only caught that there are, let's say, 10,000 products we can't crawl, but the likelihood is that there are many, many more that we also can't crawl. So if you're seeing this error, make sure you fix it because it can spiral and cause more products to be disapproved than were originally caught. Last but not least, it's important to think about how you'll be resubmitting your feed during the holidays. So typically, year-round, you have to submit your feed in two circumstances. Number one, nothing changes on your website, no product information changes, so you have to submit it every 30 days, that exact same feed, so we know you're alive and the account is well functioning. You also have to submit it whenever product information changes on your website. So if something goes out of stock or the price changes, you need to update your feed and resubmit it. And this is where it gets tricky for the holidays because very likely, and hopefully if you have good flow, you will have more frequent updates because prices might change more regularly or products come in and out of stock. So at the end of the day, there are a lot of ways you can update and submit your feed. All I have to say is make sure you're doing it and make sure it's getting resubmitted frequently or as needed whenever things change. One way to help prevent disapprovals for what we call price mismatch is simply to use the sale price and sale price effective date attributes in your feed. You'll still submit the price, but you can also say that on December 15th at 3 p.m. I have things going on sale, and this is the sale price that should take effect. Essentially then, you don't need to resubmit your feed when that sale goes live. We'll know when to schedule it, and we will automatically change your product listing ad prices to the sales price specified for the duration specified. And then last but not least, just an exciting kind of new launch is called automatic item updates. So this is really brand new, launched at the end of September, but essentially it's a way that you can opt in to allow Google to crawl your site. And if we see that you're specifying $100 in your feed, but your website says $150, we'll assume the website is right and actually update your PLAs to include the website price. So this is great for people who are on top of their website updates but may not be as diligent about their feeds. You can opt into automatic item updates and we can start taking care of some of that for you. Great for preventing disapprovals and also for having accurate data. The only caveat here is that you do need to be using schema.org for website microdata, which is essentially the way that you mark up your HTML to tell us here's where my prices are, here's where my availability is. If you're not, this might not happen for Q4, but certainly something to keep on your radar. Okay, so we got through some core feed optimization checkpoints, and those primarily dealt with making sure that all of your inventory is eligible to show so that you're not limiting your campaigns from the get-go. Now that your data feed is in place, let's move on to talking about the campaign side of that PLA foundation. So here is roughly the strategy, kind of the summary of the strategy we recommend you use, not only for the holidays, but really throughout the year. So at the bottom, we have a tail or a core campaign. This campaign would represent 100% of your inventory and as a result would allow you to be eligible whenever people are searching for any item in your feed, regardless of how small or large that traffic volume is. In the middle, we have a medium top performers campaign. This is a little bit more profit dense in the sense that these are the guys that show up every day and give you a pretty strong return on ad spend, so you're willing to spend more on them and invest more in them. And then at the top, you have your head or your trending campaign. So this would be where you're trying to take advantage of contextual, kind of seasonal, trending query spikes that allow you to uncap profit potential. So as a quick example of this, going back to our cologne example, so your tail or your core, or rather let's start at the head. So your head might be where you have the gift set. So the 3-piece men's cologne gift set that you know is just a huge traffic driver to your website. You know there's a lot of query volume there, so you want to make sure that you're advertising that aggressively. In the middle, you might have, let's say, the 5-ounce bottle that is kind of your midline price. It may not drive as much traffic, but it certainly drives strong conversions, typically because it's not quite as expensive as a gift set, but it still is a very nice holiday gift. So that's kind of your consistent return on ad spend guy. At the bottom in your core campaign, this might be where you have like the travel size or the refills. So they're not decorative bottles, they're just kind of very functional, not as popular during the holidays, but you want to make sure those are available in case that's what somebody is looking for. So again, all of this is just to say that this is allowing you to tier your campaigns according to profit potential and query volume, so that you make sure you're focusing on the right products at the right time. So as a starting point, let's talk first about this core campaign that shows 100% of your inventory, runs all year round, and is kind of your testing bed for your year-long or your long-term optimization decisions. Couple of hygiene points within this campaign, starting with that you want to make sure this campaign has the only active all products group in your entire account. So that is to say, the all products catch-all ensures that 100% of your inventory is eligible to show as PLAs. But you want to make sure, especially if you're using multiple ad groups or multiple campaigns, that you only have one of them and that you know where it is. So in a single ad group, that's pretty easy. As you can see on the left-hand side, it's simply going to fall to kind of the bottom of your segmentation under product groups. Here, you'll just make sure it has a bid and you're good to go. If you are using multiple ad groups, we recommend that you put that all products catch-all in its own ad group and then have nothing else in it, and then exclude it from every other ad group. And the reason for that is that way you know where it is, you can simply search for the ad group name all products, and you know it's there, and you don't ever have to include it again in any other ad group. So next and first in terms of using some of our new exciting metrics from shopping campaigns is we want to talk about tailoring your bidding strategy using that benchmark max CPC metric. So it's a little bit of a flow chart or decision tree that I'll talk you through, but essentially here's how it goes. First and foremost, you'll go to the product group tab and you'll see if you're happy with that group's performance. So does it have a good impression share? Does it have a good click-through rate? Am I happy with the conversions? If you'd answered yes, obviously, you don't need to do too much. You can increase your bid if it's highly valuable and you want to increase your traffic more. If you say no, this is where you need to compare your bid against the max CPC benchmark. If your bid is lower and you're unhappy with performance, this is an opportunity to increase your bid. You can either use your internal tools or you can use Bid Simulator in Google, in Google AdWords, to see how increasing your bid might uncap some of your traffic and get you more traffic since you're unhappy with that performance. In contrast, if your bid is actually already higher than the benchmark, increasing your bid is not going to do you much good. You're already bidding higher than competitors on similar products, so there's something else going on. And typically what's going on is that you have poor data quality on the products in that group, so even if you bid significantly more, it's not really going to help you achieve better quality results. So in terms of if it is a data quality issue, there's a couple of things you can do. And this goes back to feeds. So again, I said feeds were important, and it's absolutely true. This time we'll talk about it more from a data quality perspective. So first and foremost, sometimes what we see is that when feeds are pulled directly from e-commerce databases, those e-commerce databases have titles that are not exactly shopper-friendly. They're functional for the database, but not so much for shoppers who are looking to understand what this product is at a glance. So often we see that if they're from the database, they can include like those long SKUs or just a lot of numbers or random kind of characters. So what you want to do is optimize those titles to include the information that people are looking for. In the first example, if size is an important one, include that up front. If the Acme brand has a lot of equity, if there's a lot of credibility in the Acme brand, move the Acme brand up front. Or maybe in the last example, if things like comfort or luxury are important qualifiers for this product, you want to make sure to include those. So long story short, there's a lot of ways to optimize your titles. You need to think about what is the most important term for that product and make sure it's included. The next thing we see is often the descriptions pulled from e-commerce databases will just be a repetition of the title. So sometimes there are these long versions and short versions in databases. We want the long version. So you have up to 5,000 characters to write in your description. Make sure you're telling us as much as possible. Think about for this bike, for example, if it has an aluminum fork or a carbon this or that or a certain type of components with brand equity. Those are the important things to put in your descriptions. Not only will shoppers be able to see these descriptions, but then we can also, from an indexing and a query parsing perspective, understand more and better how to match. Another one that we often see issues with is Google product category. So Google product category is only required for a certain set of products, software and media and a few others, but even if it's not required, we strongly recommend you submit it because it's your opportunity to tell Google more about your products in our own language. So this is the categorization that's used in the algorithm, and it's really helpful to us in understanding exactly what your product is. So instead of just submitting at the most high level, for example, sporting goods, make sure you download that full taxonomy and really understand how granular you can get, obviously getting as granular as possible for each individual item. In terms of brand, sometimes we see confusion here. So for example, if it's B&K Sporting Goods is the retailer selling this Acme cruiser bike, sometimes we'll see that the brand is the retailer name. That brand should really be the brand of the product and not the retailer. Again, that helps us understand who's making it, how to match it. So make sure the brand is actually the brand of the product. Additionally, we see that people sometimes have their own proprietary coloring system, so they might call this bike Lightning and Lilac. It's very cool for kind of their own website and awesome for people who really associate with the brand. Not as helpful for Google. We need to know, or it's better if you can tell us that this is actually yellow and purple, and you want to make sure you're formatting it in a way we can read it. So separate your colors, up to 3 of them, with slash, and do it in order of prominence. So if it's solid yellow with purple polka dots and pink stripes, it would obviously go yellow slash purple slash pink. So now that we've talked about your core campaign, we're going to speed up a little bit and just kind of talk about those last 2 campaigns. The reason we speed up is because they're fairly similar in their structure, but it's really this is where you apply your strategy. So I'll talk you through the technical pieces of it. So in your top performers campaign, remember this is where you're not going to showcase your entire inventory, but rather the smaller proportion of it that you know is strong in terms of return on ad spend, the things people want to buy that you can rely on to show up every day and do some converting on your behalf. So this is where you can capture more profit because you can uncap your budget because you're comfortable and confident that these products are going to perform well for you. So the first step is, hopefully you've done a lot of this already in your planning stage, but you also want to gut check that your strategy is actually truly focusing on your top performers. Shopping campaigns makes it really easy to understand what in your campaign is considered a top performer, because under that dimensions tab, you can actually sort your data by the targetable attributes like product type, brand, even item ID. So we recommend going through each of those and seeing what is performing well where, and understanding which IDs, which brands, even which product types are driving your clicks as well as your conversions. In many cases, you might find that your top performers span multiple brands, multiple product types, and obviously multiple IDs. If that's the case, you can either choose to target them by ID, or it's often much easier to throw a custom label on them. So in the feed, this is where you would choose a custom label, in this example, custom label 0, and every single item that you wanted to consider a top performer for this medium campaign, this is where you would tag it with top performer in the feed. What this then allows you to do is exactly what you're seeing here. So in my top performers campaign, I've subdivided for my best sellers or my top performers, whatever that label you chose is. From there, within the 25% of my products that are tagged top performers, I can still subdivide to try to get more granular bids on my top performing bags versus clothing versus jewelry. But then most importantly, at the bottom, I want to exclude everything else in my all products because I don't want that showing up in this campaign. This campaign is exclusively for top performers, so everything else is excluded, and this way only that 25% that I've identified is what's going to show. From there, you want to make sure you're changing your campaign priority to medium. What this tells Google is that if a product in this campaign is also in another campaign, first take this bid and then take the low priority bid if there isn't a medium priority bid. So remember, you're going to have overlap because about 25% of your inventory will be in both this and your core campaign. Throwing that medium priority on there tells us to take the bids in this campaign first when available. And then last but not least, remember, a huge reason for doing this strategy, this tiered strategy, is so that you can uncap the potential on your best sellers. So make sure you're uncapping your budget as much as possible and then using your bids instead to manage your return on ad spend. So if you find that return on ad spend is slipping, try not to kind of knee-jerk reaction cap your budget. Rather, find that sweet spot with your bids where you're maintaining profitable bids but also making sure you're capturing as many impressions as possible through that uncapped budget. Okay, so very similarly with the seasonal strategy, what we're focusing on here is I'm making up a percentage, but let's say 15 or 10% that are really kind of our trending terms. We know they're on billboards everywhere. We know they're going to drive clicks into our website. So these are the ones where we want to capture that traffic and really make sure that we're taking advantage of all the extra volume coming through in Q4. So the first thing you'll need to do to figure out your seasonal strategies is ideally you'll be creating one campaign for each of the rows in the table you made earlier. So one for My Halloween, one for Cyber Monday, etc. So in order to do this, you need to identify how you'll be able to target the products in each of these rows. So in some cases, it's pretty straightforward. For all my electronics on Cyber Monday, I can use product type. For my 3 brands that are after Christmas in-house brands, I can use brands. Where we need to add that custom label is just like for top performers on anything that spans multiple product types, conditions, brands, or IDs. So black and orange apparel obviously would need a custom label, and then the Christmas products, those almost 2,000 SKUs across multiple brands and product types, I also need to add a custom label to my feed for as well. So once you've figured out all that, you'll need to actually create a campaign for each of those seasonal promotions or seasonal periods. So when you're doing this in your campaign workflow, you'll change the priority to each of these to high. Again, it's at the top. We want to stack it on top of our top performers and on top of our core campaign. And the other nice thing you can do here is actually schedule a start and end date. So this allows you to not have to wake up at midnight on December 1st in order to turn that campaign on, but rather it'll start running without you having to do anything. And it also stop running when the promotion or when that period is over. Again, I can't emphasize enough that you want to make sure that you're excluding everything else. So let's say this is my after Christmas campaign where I'm targeting my in-house brands, Acme, Beta, and C.C. So this would be I target those brands by subdividing for them, and then everything else that does not include one of those brands I want to exclude. Again, this is my post-Christmas campaign. I'm only targeting the brands that I know I want to target per my holiday planning. Okay, so I promised that we'd talk about mobile shoppers, and here we are. Essentially, obviously your mobile website is a huge part of your success on mobile devices. So you want to make sure that you're checking it against these 5 checkpoints, but in particular, if there's only one thing you have time to do before Q4, I would encourage it to be looking at how to reduce friction in your checkout process. We see tons of people who have, 5 or more steps just to check out, or then they generate errors at the end. So if there's one thing you can do, think about your checkout process. I do want to throw this out there that Google does have an instant buy solution where for people using Google Wallet, they can do at first I think it's a 3-step process, and then every subsequent time on any retailer, it's a 1-step checkout process. This is just one option. At the end of the day, I don't really care, or I don't think we really care who you use. It's just about making sure your customers can easily convert. So there's more information about this online, but essentially this is an API integration, and you must have a mobile optimized website to use it. Once you integrate with your mobile website, you can choose to use it on your desktop website as well. But again, this is just one option. Ultimately, at the end of the day, think about how you can make it easier for people to convert and do that. Once you have a beautiful website, and even if you don't, and you just have kind of an okay mobile website, we do want to make sure you're taking advantage of the new attribute called mobile link, which was launched in fairly recently in the feed specification update. So this mobile link, just like it sounds, allows you to specify a mobile landing page for each product so that you can make sure you're not having redirect loops and you're minimizing the time to transfer from click on a PLA to your website. And then, of course, mobile bid modifiers. So when you upgraded your shopping campaign, you may have thrown a mobile bid modifier on there, not thinking too much about it. So we recommend you go back and just verify that you're not entirely opting out of mobile traffic. So make sure your mobile bid modifier is between -90 and up to 300+%. So again, the goal here is long term, you want to make sure you're showing to mobile PLA users, and you can decide what your modifier should be by segmenting by device to see mobile versus desktop performance. And you can also, if you're not really sure what to do, look at and replicate what you're doing on text ads. Great starting place for the holidays, and long term we'll be diving into more best practices for optimizing for mobile, but for now just start simple and replicate what you're doing. And then for those of you who have conversion tracking, do make sure that you're enabling what's called estimated total conversions. Simply a column that helps you get the full picture of how shoppers are actually ultimately converting on your products. So in many cases, this allows us to see if somebody started browsing on their mobile phone while sitting on their couch and seeing one of those cologne commercials, only to then kind of make the purchase at work the next day on their lunch break on their desktop. This helps us see the value of those clicks long term, even if the conversion wasn't completed kind of in the same session on the same device. So again, 75% of smartphone shoppers plan to use phones in store during the holiday season. Again, this is just one way of trying to close that loop. Along those lines, I just want to throw out there, this probably isn't realistic to execute in Q4 if you haven't started talking about this already, but local inventory ads are something that I want to put on your radar for next year and beyond. So local inventory ads allow you to surface when your products are in stock within driving distance of somebody searching. So again, the use case that I think is so exciting and that I'm sure we'll be sharing more with you after we see how it pans out this year is post that shipping cutoff date when people want to have something in hand, they want to stop on their way home and just kind of get it over with or get it done. This is where this type of thing is unprecedented. You can't do this without local inventory ads. So if you're not sure what these are or what I'm talking about, definitely check out our Help Center online to kind of start learning more about it. Start talking with your clients, or if you're a retailer, start talking with your team about how to source local information about your products that are in stores, because that'll be integral to kind of getting on this in future holiday seasons and future years. Okay, so we've almost made it. We're almost to the end. I would just remind you guys, if you have any questions, please do throw them in that Q&A widget. More than happy to answer those in just a few minutes after these last couple of slides. So back to our optimization section. Essentially, this is about adjusting to in-season performance. You're not making sweeping changes. You're not doing anything drastic. You're well prepared. You're well set up. So now you're just going to do that fine-tuning to make sure that you're getting the most based on season actualities as opposed to forecasts. So first and foremost, and again, I'll put in a plug, make sure you're staying on top of feed disapprovals. if you have products being disapproved, if you have feeds that are going down, you could have the most brilliant campaign in the world and it's not going to do you much good if that feed is not functioning properly. So make sure you have a plan to work with your IT or your feed management team to make sure you're checking for and addressing any errors in your Merchant Center account. Within the campaign side, a really quick gauge of how well you're performing is that impression share metric that's new to shopping campaigns. In the campaign or the product group level, you can simply sort for impression share and see which of my particular product groups are doing well and where do I have more opportunity. So where is it that I'm getting a good return on ad spend, but let's say my impression share is under 60%, so I know there's a lot more many more shoppers I could be connecting to with this successful product group. So once you've identified product groups that you want to kind of boost the impression share on, one way to estimate the impact of increasing your bids is through the bid simulator tool. So this allows you to see where are you currently, and if you were to increase your bid by X amount, so you can see some different max CPCs in this table, what would be the impact on your clicks, your impressions, but also your cost. So that helps you understand, like, on average, based on my current performance and aggregated query information, where am I going to be if I increase my bid? So if I know I have, $1,000 left to spend this month because I over budgeted, this can help me understand how to adjust so that I'm spending my budget in smart ways. Along kind of similar mindset, you do want to also make sure that you're filtering your shopping campaigns to understand which, if any, are limited by budget. In other words, they're going dark midday or they're going dark mid-season. So you can do this simply by adding a filter for status equals eligible limited. That will pull up any campaigns that are limited by budget, meaning yes, they're serving, but maybe they're running out of budget midday or they're not serving as much as they could. The other way to do this is segmenting your data by time of day in the Dimensions tab. So that'll give you a really good sense of if things are really starting to kind of die down around 2 p.m., likely that's not because of query volume, that's going to be because your budget is running out. And keep in mind that shoppers truly are searching at all times of the day and from all devices. So certainly keep an eye on the time of day segmentation so that you can make sure budgets are not ending before your shoppers go to bed. Okay, so we've made it to Q&A, and it doesn't look like we have any questions in the widget at this point. So again, I'll just put in one more plug for you to add those. I would much prefer to take your live questions, but I do also have kind of a few frequently asked questions, particularly that we hear around kind of troubleshooting. So I'll go through these while hopefully you guys add some more questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap up here. So our first frequently asked question, and I get this a lot, but my product listing ads simply aren't showing up. Should I just bid up? I already increased my bid and it's still not appearing. So kind of like we talked about with the PC benchmark, typically this, like, I'm not showing up despite increasing my bid, means that there's a data quality problem. You could increase, I mean, maybe not in every case, and I certainly wouldn't recommend trying, but kind of the scenario here is you could increase your bid to like $1,000 and it probably wouldn't help much because your products just aren't eligible because of poor data quality. So to increase your impression volume, you need to increase your product eligibility. And to do that, you need to make sure that your product data in your feed is complete, fresh, and accurate. You must have accurate, unique product identifiers. So again, going into an Excel file version of your feed and sorting for any products that don't have GTIN or don't have NPN, that's a great first step and pretty easy to do regardless of how familiar or not you are with feeds. And then of course in the Merchant Center account, if you have access, make sure you're looking at item level disapprovals and fixing those whenever possible. Next common question we get is that the traffic I'm getting isn't converting. So I may be getting enough traffic, but it's not turning into purchasers. So how do I drive more qualified traffic? And should I be doing SKU level bidding and negative keywords? So at the end of the day, this is all about making sure that two things. Number one, you want to make sure that the PLA is showing the right things. You want to have shopper-friendly titles and complete product descriptions, and you also want to make sure that your images are high quality and actually show what you're selling in kind of its best light. Sometimes we see that, especially with variant products, people will be advertising red high heels and show like a blue flat or even just a blue high heel. Not the best user experience, and certainly not something that's going to convince people to buy. So titles and images are your levers because that's what primarily shows in your actual PLA ad unit. The other thing you need to be thinking about here is really on your own website. So are there ways you can optimize your landing pages or your website experience? Maybe it's a checkout issue. This is really where you need to dive into analytics, that any kind of analytical program you have on your website, to understand where are people falling out of the path, where are they falling out of the conversion funnel, and how can I keep them in it or make it easier for them to complete. So another question we get asked often is, again, even though I've mentioned how important data feeds are, it is the case that often another team manages your data feed. So if that's the case, what's the one or two things I need to tell my data feed management team to focus on for the holidays? And I said one or two, but I'm going to give you three. So the three things to tell them to focus on is to make sure that you're submitting all required attributes, especially those unique product identifiers. To make your life easier, you also want to work with them on a custom label strategy that will allow you to very easily target and isolate those pockets of top performers or Christmas items or Halloween sale items, those pockets of products that span multiple brands, multiple product types that you want to be able to isolate, bid on, and budget in its own campaign. You can also use product type to do this, just depending on how your inventory is set up and how diverse it is. So ultimately creating a custom label and a product type strategy that makes your campaign creation process easier. And then, of course, make sure that they're including any mobile landing page URLs that you have in your feed, since this will help you make sure that you're capturing all traffic from all devices. Okay, so I have a question from Joe. And so anyone else, if we don't get any more questions after I answer Joe's, we'll be done, and there will be the recording, so feel free to check it out and share it. But otherwise, here is Joe's question. So Joe says, we notice across most clients that mobile conversion rate is much lower than desktop or tablet. Is there anything you suggest doing specifically to increase conversion rate other than lowering our mobile bids? So yeah, this is kind of the classic chicken and the egg problem in my mind, because what happens is we don't get good investment in mobile, which means that often people are not paying as much attention to their mobile website, they're not doing the analysis on their mobile website, they're not investing in better shopping cart experiences or user experience research, and so obviously with a worse experience on mobile, people don't invest because conversion rates are low, but because conversion rates are low, people don't invest. You get the idea, it's pretty cyclical. So if there was one thing I would recommend doing to increase mobile conversion rates, it would be looking at your website checkout on mobile, making sure it's easy to browse products, to learn about them, and then to actually purchase them. We have a Google recently released 25 principles for mobile site design. That's excellent. It's absolutely excellent in terms of specific checkpoints you can benchmark your mobile site against, and I think it's especially compelling in terms of form submission. They talk a lot about these little things that are intuitive once you read them, but for example, when you're filling out a form, if I move from the name field to the credit card field to the expiration date field, and then I hit submit, only to find out there were errors in my expiration date field, that's a bad experience, and I probably put my phone down and say, maybe I'll get to this later on a desktop. However, if as soon as I move from the expiration date field to another field, I get an error message right there and then, I'm much more likely to go back to that field right away and fix it. So those are the types of things. It's a little example, but those are great benchmarks to look at and kind of compare your site against, because they're really helpful for surfacing the kinds of experience factors that really help people convert on mobile and get more out of their experience. So again, long story short, if there's one thing you're going to do to help increase mobile conversion rates, I would say look at the website. Okay, so with 5 minutes to spare, I think that is it for us. Thank you so much to all of you who tuned in. I know that was a lot of content in a relatively short amount of time, so thanks for your patience, and I look forward to seeing you next time.